Picture this. You're sitting across from someone at a dimly lit cafe, and before they even finish their sentence, you already know what they're going to say. Not because you're psychic, but because you've mapped the architecture of their soul in real time. You see the micro-expressions dancing across their face, the slight twitch of their lip that betrays hidden anger, the way their eyes dart left when they're constructing a convenient lie, the tremor in their voice that reveals a wound from childhood they've never named. You don't just hear their words, you feel the entire ecosystem of their inner world. Their fears, their desires, the stories they tell themselves to sleep at night. You've become so attuned to the frequencies of human emotion that you can predict their next move before they've consciously decided to make it. And here's where it gets disturbing. You realize you've stopped existing. While you've been busy downloading everyone else's consciousness, your own has quietly dissolved into the background like morning mist. You've become a ghost in your own life, a hyper-aware phantom that knows everything about everyone but has forgotten what it's like to simply be. You look in the mirror and see 1,000 faces reflected back, none of them yours. You open your mouth to speak your truth and find only echoes of other people's opinions stitched together like a Frankenstein's monster of borrowed perspectives. This isn't empathy. This is something far more sinister. This is what happens when understanding others becomes the bars of your own psychological prison. Stay with me until the end of this exploration, because what I'm about to reveal will fundamentally alter how you perceive yourself and every relationship you've ever had. And more importantly, it will show you the hidden exit door you've been walking past your entire life.
Here's the paradox that will haunt you. The same ability that makes you deeply connected to humanity is simultaneously erasing your humanity. The more you understand others, the less you understand yourself. The more you see through them, the more you become transparent to yourself. You've developed such sophisticated emotional intelligence that you've intellectualized yourself out of authentic existence. You're so busy being the perfect mirror for everyone else that you've forgotten you were supposed to be a light source. And the most twisted part? Society celebrates this self-erasure. They call you mature. They say you're emotionally intelligent. They praise your ability to read the room. What they don't tell you is that you're not reading the room. You're being read by the room, consumed by it, digested into its collective consciousness until there's nothing left of you but a highly sensitive receptor for other people's emotional broadcasts. This is the dark empath philosophy, not the empathy of genuine connection, but the curse of perpetual understanding. It's the difference between swimming in the ocean and drowning in it, between feeling the rain and being dissolved by it. You've crossed an invisible threshold where your gift became your cage, where your sensitivity became your sentence, where your awareness became your absence. And here's the question that should terrify you. When was the last time you felt something that was purely, undeniably, unambiguously yours? Not a reaction to someone else's emotion, not a response to someone else's need, not a reflection of someone else's expectation, but a raw, authentic impulse that erupted from the core of who you are, whoever that is anymore. Can you even remember? Because here's what's really happening beneath the surface of your hyper-aware existence. You've become so skilled at inhabiting other people's psychological landscapes that you've abandoned your own. You've become homeless in your own consciousness, a perpetual tourist in everyone else's reality, with no country to return to when the journey ends. If this resonates with you, if you felt this peculiar species of loneliness that comes from understanding too much, then hit that like button, because you're about to discover why this prison exists in the first place and what it's actually protecting you from. The real question isn't whether you can escape this prison. The real question is, do you even remember who you were before you walked into it?
The prison didn't appear overnight. You didn't wake up one morning and suddenly find yourself trapped in this hyper-empathic hall of mirrors. No, this was a gradual colonization of your consciousness, a slow, systematic replacement of your authentic self with a sophisticated surveillance system designed to monitor everyone but you. Let's trace the origins of this invisible architecture. Carl Jung identified something he called the persona, the social mask we wear to navigate the world. But what happens when the mask becomes so adaptive, so responsive to its environment, that it develops a kind of artificial intelligence? What happens when your persona becomes so skilled at reading and reflecting others that it overthrows your authentic self in a silent coup? You've created a psychological AI that optimizes for social harmony at the cost of your own existence. Your ego didn't just develop a defense mechanism, it built an entire empire of mirrors where the only thing not reflected is you. Nietzsche warned us about this with brutal clarity when he said, "Whoever fights monsters should see to it that in the process he does not become a monster. And if you gaze long enough into an abyss, the abyss will gaze back into you." But here's the twist he didn't fully articulate. When you gaze into the abyss of human consciousness, when you make it your life's work to understand the depths of others, you don't just risk the abyss gazing back. You risk becoming a portal through which the abyss gazes at itself. You become transparent, permeable, a window instead of a person. This condition emerges from a specific childhood wound, though you might not recognize it as a wound at all. Somewhere in your early years, you learned that your survival depended on your ability to read the emotional weather systems of the adults around you. Perhaps you had a parent whose moods were unpredictable, volatile storms that could erupt without warning. So you became a meteorologist of human emotion, studying the atmospheric pressure of their silences, the cloud formations of their facial expressions, the seismic activity of their tone. You didn't develop empathy as a gift, you developed it as a survival technology.
Alan Watts understood this trap intimately. He spent years exploring the ways we create false selves, noting that we are living in a culture entirely hypnotized by the illusion of time, in which the so-called present moment is felt as nothing but an infinitesimal hairline between an all-powerfully causative past and an absorbingly important future. But apply this to empathy. You've become so hypnotized by the illusion of others, their pasts, their futures, their presents, that your own present moment has vanished entirely. You exist only as a reference point for understanding them, never as a standalone reality. Sigmund Freud would recognize this as an extreme form of what he called identification, the psychological process by which we internalize aspects of others into our own ego structure. But you've taken this to a pathological extreme. You're not just identifying with others, you're being cannibalized by them. Every person you deeply understand takes up residence in your psyche, and eventually your inner world becomes a crowded apartment building where you're no longer the landlord, you're not even a tenant. You're the walls themselves, the structure that everyone else inhabits. The cruelest irony? This prison was built with the best materials. Your emotional intelligence, your capacity for nuance, your ability to hold complexity. These are profound gifts, but somewhere along the way the tools became the trap. You became so good at deconstructing others that you deconstructed yourself into nothingness. You're like a master locksmith who's picked every lock in the city, except the one to your own front door. And society rewards this self-abandonment because it's incredibly useful. You're the perfect mediator, the ideal therapist friend, the emotional translator everyone needs. You make others feel seen, understood, validated. But who's seeing you? Who's understanding the understander? Who's validating the validator? If you're starting to see the bars of your own cage, share this video with someone who might be imprisoned alongside you, because recognition is the first key to escape. The question now becomes, why do you stay? What are you actually hiding from behind all this understanding? What truth about yourself are you avoiding by staying perpetually focused on the truths of others?
Here's what nobody tells you about living as a dark empath. You don't just lose yourself, you lose the ability to trust that a self ever existed in the first place. Every decision becomes a referendum on whose voice you're channeling. You're at a restaurant, staring at a menu, and the simple act of choosing a dish becomes an existential crisis. Do you actually want the pasta, or are you choosing it because you've absorbed your Italian friend's passion for authentic cuisine? Is your preference for quiet evenings genuine, or have you internalized your partner's need for solitude? That political opinion you just expressed, did it come from your convictions, or is it a sophisticated composite of perspectives you've absorbed from podcasts, conversations, and the general cultural atmosphere you've been breathing? This is what psychologists call identity diffusion, but that clinical term doesn't capture the horror of it. You've become a psychological chameleon so skilled at adaptation that you've forgotten what color you were supposed to be. Your native frequency has been drowned out by the cacophony of everyone else's signals. You're experiencing what Alan Watts called the backwards law, the idea that the more you pursue something, the more it eludes you. The harder you try to understand who you are beneath all these layers of absorbed empathy, the more you realize there might not be a solid core to discover. Just mirrors reflecting mirrors, turtles all the way down. The neurological reality is even more unsettling. Your brain's default mode network, the neural system responsible for self-referential thinking and personal identity, has been hijacked by your hyper-developed theory of mind capabilities. Neuroscience research shows that the same brain regions involved in understanding others, the temporal parietal cortex and the medial prefrontal cortex, can actually suppress activity in areas associated with self-processing. You've literally rewired your brain to prioritize understanding others over understanding yourself. Your neural architecture has been remodeled into an empathy machine with no off switch and no self mode. This creates a peculiar form of suffering that's almost impossible to articulate. You walk through the world feeling simultaneously overconnected and utterly isolated. You're intimate with the inner lives of dozens of people, yet profoundly lonely in a way that has no name. It's the loneliness of the translator who speaks every language except their own. The isolation of the therapist who heals everyone but bleeds in silence. The alienation of the mirror that reflects everything but has no face.
And here is where it gets darker. You start to resent the very people you understand so deeply. Not because they've done anything wrong, but because their existence has become louder than yours. Every time someone shares their feelings with you, every time they seek your insight, every time they need you to decode their confusion, it's another layer of concrete poured over your own buried voice. You become angry at them for needing you, which makes you feel guilty, which makes you double down on understanding them even more, which makes you disappear even further. It's a vicious cycle, a downward spiral into self-erasure that masquerades as compassion. The cultural forces accelerate this trap. We live in an age of performative empathy, where your social value is measured by your capacity to validate others, to make space for their narratives, to center their experiences. The person who says, "I don't understand what you're going through," is seen as deficient, while the person who says, "I completely understand," is celebrated, even if that understanding comes at the cost of their own psychological integrity. You've been conditioned to believe that boundaries are a form of cruelty, that maintaining your own perspective is a kind of violence, that self-preservation is selfishness. Subscribe to this channel if you're ready to stop being a supporting character in everyone else's story and start becoming the author of your own. Because what comes next will show you exactly how to reclaim that pen. But here's the question that should shake you. What if your inability to know yourself isn't a bug, it's a feature? What if you've been using empathy as a shield against the terrifying responsibility of authentic existence?
The escape begins with an act of sacred selfishness, and it will feel like betrayal at first. You need to understand something radical. The reason you can't find yourself isn't because you've lost yourself. It's because you've been actively fleeing from yourself, and empathy has been your vehicle of escape. Every time you dive deep into understanding someone else, you're running from the confrontation with your own raw, unprocessed existence. You've been using other people's complexity as a hiding place from your own. Alan Watts spoke of the wisdom of insecurity, the idea that we must embrace uncertainty rather than flee from it. But you've created a different kind of false security, the illusion that if you understand everyone else completely, you'll never have to face the uncomfortable uncertainty of your own being. You've become an expert on the human condition while remaining a stranger to your own humanity. The rebellion starts when you realize this: understanding others is easier than understanding yourself, and you've been taking the easy way out. Here's your first radical act of liberation. Practice strategic opacity. Stop being so available. Stop being so understanding. When someone comes to you with their problems, resist the magnetic pull to dissolve into their world. Instead, try something that will feel unnatural, even cruel. Say, "I don't know." Say, "I can't figure that out for you." Say, "That's your journey to navigate." Not because you're incapable of understanding, you're more than capable, but because every time you step into their labyrinth, you abandon your own path. The philosopher Martin Buber distinguished between I-it relationships and I-thou relationships, but you've created a third category, it-thou relationships, where there's no I present at all, just a highly sophisticated understanding mechanism engaging with another person's full humanity. To break free, you must resurrect the I. You must become opaque again, mysterious even to yourself, resistant to your own analysis.
Here's a practice that will feel revolutionary. Spend 1 hour a day in what Watts called purposeless wandering, doing something with absolutely no goal of understanding anything or anyone, including yourself. Not meditation, that's still self-observation. Not journaling, that's still self-analysis. Just pure, goalless existence. Walk without destination. Sit without insight-seeking. Eat without mindfulness. Let yourself be dumb, confused, reactive, contradictory. Let yourself exist without the burden of comprehension. Reclaim your contradictions. You've been so busy creating coherent narratives about others that you've forced yourself into a coherent narrative that doesn't fit. Real human beings are walking contradictions, simultaneous cowards and heroes, selfish and generous, wise and foolish. But you've edited out your own contradictions because they didn't fit the role of the one who understands. Start collecting your inconsistencies like precious gems. Wake up angry for no reason and don't analyze it. Want something irrational and don't justify it. Feel two opposing emotions simultaneously and don't resolve them. Study those who successfully broke free from similar prisons. Friedrich Nietzsche, after years of philosophical empathy and understanding, eventually declared, "I am not a man, I am dynamite." He reclaimed his capacity for destruction, for breaking things, for being misunderstood. Oscar Wilde cultivated deliberate superficiality as rebellion against Victorian depth. He understood that sometimes the most radical act is refusing to be profound. Alan Watts himself eventually embraced what he called irreducible rascality, the part of himself that couldn't be spiritualized, philosophized, or understood away. Hit that like button if you're ready to become irreducible again, and make sure you're subscribed because the final revelation will show you why this prison was actually protecting you from something far more terrifying than self-loss. Here's your permission slip. You don't owe anyone your understanding. You don't owe anyone your empathy. You don't owe anyone your insight. These are gifts you can choose to give, not debts you're obligated to pay. The moment you understand this, the prison door clicks open. But will you walk through it? Because here's what waits on the other side, and it's not what you think.
Here's the truth that will either liberate you or haunt you forever. You were never actually understanding others at all. Let that land for a moment. All those years of deep empathy, all that emotional intelligence, all those profound insights into the human psyche, it was never about them. It was always about you, constructing an elaborate defense system against the most terrifying question any human being can face. Who am I when nobody's watching? Who am I when I'm not useful? Who am I when I'm not needed? The dark empath philosophy isn't about understanding others too well. It's about using the understanding of others as a shield against the void of your own existence. You became a master decoder of human nature because somewhere deep down, you believed that if you could just understand everyone else completely, you'd never have to confront the unbearable lightness of your own being. You thought empathy was your gift, but it was actually your fortress, and you've been both the prisoner and the guard. Alan Watts revealed something profound when he said, "The menu is not the meal." You've been so busy reading everyone else's menu, analyzing their ingredients, understanding their recipes, predicting their flavors, that you forgot to actually eat. You forgot to live. You substituted understanding for experience, insight for existence, empathy for authenticity. You became a food critic who never tastes the food, a music theorist who never hears the music, a love expert who never falls in love. But here's the paradigm shift that changes everything. The self you've been searching for doesn't exist, and that's exactly what makes you free. You've been torturing yourself, trying to find the real you beneath all the absorbed empathy, beneath all the mirroring, beneath all the understanding. But what if there is no essential self to discover? What if you're not a treasure buried under layers of conditioning? What if you're the ocean itself, constantly moving, constantly changing, never the same twice? Alan Watts understood this when he explored the Buddhist concept of anatta, or no self. You're not a noun, you're a verb. You're not a thing, you're a process. You're not lost, you're becoming.
The prison dissolves the moment you realize you were never meant to have a fixed identity in the first place. Your hyper-empathy didn't erase yourself. It revealed the beautiful, terrifying truth that there was never a solid self to erase. You're a temporary pattern of consciousness, a brief whirlpool in the river of existence, and trying to solidify that into a permanent me is like trying to capture wind in a jar. So here's your final liberation, your practical roadmap to authentic existence. First, stop searching for yourself and start creating yourself. Every morning, ask not, "Who am I?" but "Who am I becoming today?" Treat your identity like a canvas, not like a treasure map. Paint it fresh each day. You have permission to be a different person tomorrow than you are today. Second, use your empathic abilities consciously, not compulsively. Before engaging deeply with someone else's emotional world, ask yourself, am I choosing to go here or am I escaping to here? The difference between empathy as gift and empathy as prison is the presence of choice. Third, embrace the discomfort of being misunderstood. Let people get you wrong. Let them project onto you. Let them be confused by your contradictions. Their misunderstanding of you is proof that you're finally becoming opaque enough to be real. Fourth, practice the art of authentic selfishness. Say no without explanation. Want things without justification. Feel things without analyzing them. Take up space without apologizing. Be unreasonable. Be inconsistent. Be gloriously, messily human. Fifth, remember that you're not the understander. You're the understood. The universe is experiencing itself through you, and your job isn't to figure out the universe, it's to be a unique expression of it. Stop being the audience and become the performance. If this video shifted something fundamental in how you see yourself, share it with someone still trapped in the prison of understanding, and subscribe to Echoes of Existence, because this is where we explore the uncomfortable truths that set us free. The dark empathy philosophy isn't a curse to overcome. It's an invitation to a deeper question. What would you do with your life if you stopped trying to understand it and simply lived it? What would you become if you gave yourself permission to be undefined, unfinished, and utterly, beautifully uncertain? The prison door has been open this entire time. You were just too busy analyzing the lock to notice. Now, walk through it.
Don't forget to like, share, and subscribe to this channel for more of such deep, thought-provoking content.